Good morning. Thanks for your patience, and we're about ready to get started with our first talk. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to David Wilson, who's going to be speaking to us today about community. This is the welcome to the first session of LibrePlanet 2024. This talk is Cultivating a Welcoming free software community that lasts, presented by David Wilson, who many of you probably know from his awesome video series. David is a free software developer and video creator from Athens, Greece. He's created system crafters to teach and craft the computing experience using free software. Today's talk will be about cultivating a welcoming community that attracts people to free software projects. David Wilson.
Thanks, Corwin. All right, you people are going to have to forgive me. I'm going to be reading directly from the notes on my phone because I'm a little bit jet-lagged, and I can't remember what I was going to say, so I'll have to do it this way. Hi, everyone. I'm David Wilson, and I'm honored to be here today to give my talk, Cultivating a Welcoming Free Software Community That Lasts. First, I want to say hello to all of my crafters who are watching on IRC right now. Appreciate y'all being there and giving support. I'm the creator of System Crafters channel and community, which is focused on the use of free software tools like GNU Emacs and GNU Geeks to craft your ideal computing environment. You can learn more about that at systemcrafters.net. Today, I want to talk to you about why community matters for the free software movement. I'll also tell you what I've learned about cultivating a welcoming community around free software projects, how to ignite collaboration toward your mission, and how to keep your community thriving for the long term. Some of these ideas I've applied myself in my own communities, but some of them are also from other communities I've seen online, and some are just my own thoughts on how I think, how I would approach community building over the long term. So I'd like to start today by telling you why I think community matters to the free software movement. This movement was founded over 40 years ago, if you could believe it, with the creation of the GNU project, an effort to develop a fully free implementation of a Unix-compatible operating system. The core belief behind the GNU project was that a user of a program should have the right to inspect and change the program to suit their needs, and then share that program, including their improvements, so that others can benefit from it. The mission of free software was to place the control of technology into the hands of the people instead of corporations and governments, because whomever controls the software you use can also control you. This has become even more true as time goes on with our increasing reliance on proprietary mobile device platforms and cloud services. Planned obsolescence, corporate surveillance, and data breaches have become the norm, unfortunately. How is free software supposed to help us solve these problems, though? My answer is through the power of community. So here are a few important ways that community matters to the free software movement. So a community can be more than just a mailing list or an IRC channel for a project. A community can become a second home to its members. But what is home? It's the place that you always return to because you feel comfortable. Feel comfortable there. You have people there who you like to catch up with. You feel that your presence is welcomed and appreciated. It's a place where you know you will always get help with the problems that you face. You'll also get inspired by new ideas. Maybe you'll even get dragged in to help solve a problem. Yes. When your community becomes a second home for its members, it takes a life of its own. Old members keep coming back, and new members stick around long enough to find their own place in the culture. This does mean that your project needs to have off-topic social channels in addition to the official project communication channels. You can't really build a welcoming community when all communication is just day-to-day business all the time. So once you've got a community that feels like home, you can turn it into an engine for the project's growth. But we're not talking about growth as a numbers game. The growth that we should be looking for is in the size of our real impact on the lives of our users and community. A strong community can create fuel for progress. When your community is excited about the project, they are motivated to tell other people about it. They're also motivated to help new people learn and solve the problems that they face. A good community can do your marketing for you. They'll tell other people about the project and community on social media websites, blogs, and in direct communication. They'll want to share the awesome things that they've learned and experienced thanks to your community. This doesn't mean that the project itself doesn't need to be valuable in its own right, but even the most successful project can't, or even the most useful project can't succeed without a healthy community. A healthy community can also be an incubator for contributors. Every free software project needs people who go beyond basic participation and begin to contribute real effort toward the project's goals. A movement like free software aims to accomplish big goals. Many free software projects aim to replace proprietary software, formats, and protocols that limit user freedom and invade their privacy. You need many people working together over a sustained period of time to achieve big goals. The best way to organize such an effort is to build a healthy community. For example, it's a huge endeavor to create a fully free operating system for mobile devices that, number one, works, number two, is enjoyable to use, and number three, can replace mainstream mobile platforms. But this is exactly what projects like Postmarket OS, Sailfish, Mobian, and others are trying to accomplish. So when someone joins your community, they may not be thinking about contributing to your project. However, the longer they stick around, the more likely they will be motivated to actually start contributing and help out. Those who really want to build their group of project contributors will pay special attention to the path by which a new contributor, a new community member eventually becomes a contributor. They should also go to great lengths to make it easy for someone to make their first contribution. We'll go over this in more detail later in the talk. So what can we do to ensure that the free software movement will continue to thrive for the next 40 years and beyond? I think we'll need to work hard to ensure the following. First is that communities around free software projects are welcoming to new people from all backgrounds. Also, community members are encouraged to contribute and given clear, approachable ways to help. And there is also structure in place to ensure that the culture and values of the community will survive even after key members move on. A healthy, welcoming community is a great asset to the free software movement. Now let's talk about how you can cultivate a strong, welcoming community. To be a welcoming community, new people must immediately feel welcome. That's it. That's the end of my talk. Thanks for coming. Just kidding. So to understand how to create a welcoming community, we must first understand what it means to be welcoming. So what is welcoming? Let's imagine there are two different communities, one called Foo and the other called Bar. You're curious to learn more about the Foo project, so you joined their IRC channel. Over the next 20 minutes, you see a lot of friendly chatter between a number of people in the channel. Some are asking questions and getting help. Others are sharing interesting things that they've discovered about the Foo project. And someone else notices that you joined the channel and says hello to you because they haven't seen your name before. There's also the Bar project, which aims to be a more correct way to do the same thing that Foo sets out to do, so you check them out too. You join their chat and you see people arguing about minor details about the use of bar. Someone else asks an innocent question about how to accomplish a particular task, and a person with operator status sends a harsh-sounding reply that this information is covered in detail in the manual. Other people in the channel joke about noobs at the asker's expense. So which of these two projects sounds more welcoming to you? Obviously, it's Foo, but what's so bad about Bar? Isn't that the way that mailing lists and chat rooms have always been in free software communities? Well, I'm here to tell you that tone or vibe matters. Any new person who visits your community will notice how people communicate with each other. This first experience they have can easily turn them into a fan or a skeptic. So how do you make sure that the tone of your community is welcoming? The key is in the behavior and the tone in the leaders and most vocal members of the community. How you show up sets the model for how the community will operate. Are you positive, helpful, and encouraging? You'll attract positive, helpful, and encouraging people. Are you critical and discriminating? You'll attract people who will argue and treat others and their ideas in the same way. Also, how you act in public outside of the communication channels of your community also matters. If you post critical judgments of other people or projects on social media, people will take notice. If you regularly encourage others, show gratitude, and give credit, people may be motivated to do the same. Everything you say and do online will inform people about how you want your community to operate. But this doesn't mean that you have to keep a spotless online presence. It's important to be authentic, because if you want to attract people to your cause, it's important to be authentic if you want to attract people to your cause, but you must also take an honest look at how you present yourself if you want to attract good people that can help you build the right kind of community. So when you become the leader of a community, people will look to you as a role model. Make sure that you're setting the kind of example that you want other people to follow. If you do this, you will attract great people who will appreciate having a friendly space to hang out. This is pretty rare, even in free software communities. So many people haven't had a chance to experience a friendly online community because so many become toxic over time. So once you've established a welcoming community, you'll have to work hard to preserve it. One important way to preserve a positive and welcoming vibe is to discourage the use of hard profanity, inappropriate or edgy jokes, teasing of others, and generally negative communication. If you begin to allow these forms of communication, the vibe will slowly worsen over time, and also new people who join might see people communicating this way and quickly assume it's one of those communities and leave immediately. So what do you do if this happens? You can gently remind those involved that you're trying to maintain a friendly vibe so that new people feel welcome. You can also use self-deprecating humor to cast the feedback in a way that doesn't feel like you're enforcing rules on everyone. For example, instead of saying, let's keep the chat clean, folks, you could say, you folks must have overheard what I said when I stubbed my toe this morning. I'm going to try to save those words for the desk and not the chat. So it's okay to occasionally slip up so long as there's no bad motive, but you'll definitely want to extinguish the spread of negative communication patterns if they begin. Encouraging positive speech can be a great deterrent to those who want to cause trouble. Troublemakers usually will make their presence known as soon as they appear. They'll test the waters to see if there are other people who engage with their kind of communication. But if all they're met with is positive communication without strong reaction to what they do, they will probably leave. It's not so fun whenever your edgy jokes or trolling isn't appreciated or even resisted. So another way to be welcoming is to have a big sign pointing to your community to let people know that you're a welcoming place to be. But many of us can't afford to pay for a huge billboard to tell people about our community, but you do probably have a website. The website for your project or community should clearly invite new people to join you. This is also a great place to tell visitors what your community is about and what you value. It can also be an entry point for people to learn about your projects and how they can find ways to help. There's not as much to say on this topic, but I did want to point out that since your website might be the first contact point someone has with your community, it's a great opportunity to welcome them to your community and show them how to join. So once you've started to cultivate a welcoming community, you can take things to the next level by finding ways to encourage your community to become active contributors. Here are some thoughts on how to do that. So an active community is a focal point of energy and attention. You've given them a place to hang out, to feel welcome, and to engage with other people. This is the perfect time to start creating easy opportunities for your community members to help the project or your overall mission. Sometimes all it takes is for a person to make one small contribution for them to get hooked and become a regular contributor. So how do you create these kinds of opportunities? So you can spend some time identifying tasks or bugs that should provide an easy starting point to work with the code. You'll also want to make it very clear that these are good starter issues and offer your personal help to enable their first contribution. Documentation and translation contributions should be made easy. If a person has to only click a couple buttons on a website to submit new documentation or translations, it'll be much more likely that they will do this than if they have to clone an entire Git repository. One big opportunity a new person will have to contribute is to help improve the documentation for working on the project. They'll have a unique experience setting up the tools and building the code. Encourage them to share any new steps or information they had to discover to get started. You can also encourage people to contribute other content like artwork, web design, tutorials, and more. There's so much more that people can contribute to the project that isn't actually just code. Contributions feel like a personal investment in a project, no matter how small. Even more important is to become the person's first contribution to free software and to be the project where it happened. Your goal should be to enable the first contribution of 10 users, then 100, then 500, and so on. Also, the tools that you use for communication and collaboration are just as important as the project itself and the community around it. You may have created an environment where people would love to contribute, but the tools you use for collaboration might not be very approachable. For example, the workflow of sending Git patch files over mailing lists has been pretty standard for free software projects for decades. However, many younger developers, even millennials, have become very familiar with the pull request model that is facilitated by forged websites like GitHub. Yes, it's possible that all your contributors can learn how to send patches to a mailing list, but you have to consider the fact that some people may not even try because it's a point of friction to becoming a new contributor. That's not to say that free software projects should be hosted on GitHub, though. Free software or open source code forges like Forgeo, I think that's the right way to pronounce that, provide a familiar collaboration workflow that can be self-hosted, or one can just leverage a public instance like Codeberg. These sites can also enable contributors to click an edit button to submit a change without cloning an entire Git repository. The positive feedback loop of having a contribution accepted will be motivating enough to make them want to clone the repo and start contributing more frequently. For project communication, many people are familiar with proprietary chat tools like Slack or Discord, and it may feel convenient to use these tools because so many people are already there, but it's definitely worth considering something like Matrix instead, or XMPP if you want to. It provides a lot of the same features that you would find in Discord while respecting user freedom. And IRC is still great, a great freedom-respecting option, but it's not quite as user-friendly or modern as something like Matrix. We use IRC in the system crafters community because it's there. People can get to it from within Emacs. It's nice to use it, but usually people will be more comfortable coming to something like Matrix instead. There's also the discourse forum software, which is licensed under the GPL v3. It provides a very friendly and modern user interface with great moderation tools to ensure that your community is easy to maintain. It can also function similar to a mailing list for people who want to use their email client to participate in discussions. And a wiki can be a great solution for community reference material if someone can easily make an edit without having to use tools like Git. Even better if it's not necessary for them to create a new account on a website to do it. So ideally, the tools you choose will respect your contributors' freedom while still being approachable and effective for the project. But there's still a balance to be struck for any project depending on the type of work that you're doing and the kind of contributors that you expect to have. And in an ideal world, you would be able to cater to a wide variety of contributors that your project wants to attract, like new contributors who have never submitted a patch before, experienced contributors who enjoy using Forge platform interfaces, or even the old school hackers who prefer to use email lists and patches for everything. So one way to turn a would-be contributor into a definite contributor is to show enthusiasm for their ideas and encourage them to work on them. Your enthusiasm can be all they need to spend the time and effort to do something great for the community. You should also publicly express gratitude to the people who help you. You should even give thanks to people who contribute useful ideas, features, and feedback. This goes a long way toward making the community feel welcoming while also encouraging more contributions. Find every opportunity that you can to promote the things that people in your community are doing. For example, in my Friday live streams, I usually start the stream by mentioning news that's relevant to the community. When there's a new effort going on in the community, I always make people aware of it. One recent example is the new web ring called Craftering that was proposed and implemented by a community member named Shom. You should consider having some kind of newsletter or blog for your community so that it's easy to broadcast the promotion of community efforts so that you can make new people aware of them and show gratitude to your community members at the same time. So even though many people may be having fun hanging out in your community and contributing to your project, your efforts may also benefit from having a well-crafted, compelling mission. A mission is your chosen path toward a better future. What future do you imagine? What are you motivated to create in the world? A mission gives your community purpose beyond the day-to-day activity. It can also give your community new ideas for how they can help to accomplish that mission. You may not have a clear mission in mind at first, but over time you'll start to see what your project or community is capable of. And your community may even help you figure out what the mission is by suggesting it to you, or maybe the things that they do will actually give you some ideas. So once your community is really engaged and you started to pick up more contributors, it's important to consider how you'll keep things going for the long term. So here's some thoughts on how to ensure that your welcoming community lasts. So at some point in your project, you may be lucky enough to have one or more contributors who seem to be a lot more engaged than the others. They take on responsibilities on their own, either helping out people in the community or stepping up to solve important problems or kick off new community initiatives. You should consider promoting in quotation marks, as we're not a business here, a contributor like this as early as possible to give them a larger role in your community. Doing this will make them feel appreciated for their work and give them a sense of purpose in what they're doing. But who should you promote? I would say that you should promote those who help you without asking them to, those who are eager to help other people solve their problems, and those who seem deeply invested in the community or project. I've personally used this strategy for years, and I've seen people who I promoted also promote others in the project with an equal level of success. One example of this is the Crafted Emacs project, which provides a pre-made Emacs configuration for people who don't want to write their own. I made Jeff Bowman a co-maintainer of that project, and he eventually promoted 2 more co-maintainers, Judy and Stefan, who helped out a lot in its development. And I didn't do a whole lot on the project. I think that Jeff basically drove the whole thing to completion across multiple versions. You should encourage the people that you trust to promote their own people. These trusted collaborators will help you keep the project going long term. Sounds crazy, but you should consider creating a free software pyramid scheme for the benefit of your community. So you do have to be careful about supply chain attacks, though. If there's anything that we've learned from the recent revelations about the XZ project, it's that even the most trustworthy contributor could have hidden motives. So give responsibilities and recognition early, but give trust and admin access only over time. So once your community reaches a certain size, it'll be harder for you and the other project founders to scale up to the number of interactions and efforts that are happening in the community at any time. And this is why it will be useful to document your culture and values somewhere that people can refer to, like your website. Once you start writing down the culture and values of the community, you should try not to make it sound too formal. What was once a thriving small community can start to feel like a job if you start dragging a bunch of rules out. It's more important to write down the positive things that the community is about to inspire people to keep those values alive. It all goes back to crafting a compelling mission. Why are we here? What do we value? What do we want to accomplish together? So once you've done the rest of the work, find ways to make yourself replaceable. Instead of doing everything yourself, delegate to the people you trust or find new people to help. The only way that a project or community can live in the long term is if it becomes a collective activity where people find their unique place to contribute to keep things going. This is especially true if your project becomes successful and you've got a ton of contributions coming your way. There's no way that one person can stay on top of reviewing everything. If you've participated in the Geeks project, you can definitely see that even if you have 10 maintainers who can merge patches, it still doesn't happen very, very fast. This becomes especially true if your project becomes successful. Oh, yes, I've already said that. This goes back to documenting your culture and values too. You'll want to make sure that the people who help you clearly understand your values and the process by which work gets done in the community. So document all the steps to all important tasks that need to be made or decisions that might need to be made so that someone else can help you do those. So times change, values change, and culture changes over the years. The quickest way to fade into obscurity is to hold too tightly to the way that we've always done it. You don't want to be the project that looks like it's from 2024 when it's actually 2048. So how do you do this? I would say listen to your community. Pay attention to the things happening outside of the sphere of your project and community. Follow the currents of interest, but don't lose sight of the core that makes your community great. And at the end of the day, the most important thing to keep in mind is why free software exists. Free software is not really about the software, it's about the people who use the software. Free software projects should care more about the community of people who gather around the project than the project itself. If you always act with the best interests of your community in mind, you will weather any storm. Now go forth, build a great community, and welcome everyone. Thank you. So that didn't fill the whole time, so if people have questions or want to chat about any of that, I'm happy to answer anything. Also, if anybody has any thoughts, or one thing I didn't cover is how to start a community. So if anybody has any questions about how to start a community, I also have ideas on that. I just felt like maybe we were just going from the assumption that we have a community already. Hi.
Hi, great talk, thank you. What is your view on codes of conduct and how rigid and strict and general guidelines for them?
Yeah, thanks. So the question, I guess maybe people on the video heard it, what are my opinions on codes of conduct? So I think that it's necessary to have a code of conduct. I didn't explicitly call it out in the slides related to the sort of rules and, the culture and values of the community. I went through the process of trying to create a code of conduct for the system crafters community, and I got a lot of really good feedback. And what it eventually boiled down to is that if you start to create a big list of rules with consequences to the rules, then you start to create a different tone in the community. However, you do need some way to encode what the expected behavior is for people in the community. So I think that the best way to approach it, in my opinion, I'm no expert on this, but the best way to approach it is to keep the list of expectations small, focus it more on the topic of don't be a jerk and don't harass people, and really focus more on the positive aspects. What is the community about? We want to be a welcoming place where anybody can feel like they can contribute here. We don't want anybody to come into our space and immediately feel like, uneasy, basically. Just try to encode things in that way so that it's not too explicit. However, existing codes of conduct, like the Creator Covenant and maybe some of the others that have been written out there by people who know more about this than me, they're also good options. So if you want to have a code of conduct for your project, look and see what other codes of conduct are being used by other projects, because there may be something that you can just pull down and apply to your own project. But for me, I felt like for my community, it was better to sort of ask my community. So I started a forum post to ask people their opinions on what I had written so far. And I was a little bit prescriptive in what I had written because I felt really very nervous about it. I wanted to make sure that what I wrote felt like it would actually help to ensure the behaviors that I wanted in the community. But then when I got the feedback from people, I felt like maybe a better balance could be struck where, we don't have a whole long list of rules. It's more just, guidelines to keep in mind.
We have a follow-up question from online.
All right.
Why not just use GNU's code of conduct?
Why not use GNU's code of conduct? I haven't read it in a while. So are we talking about the kind communication guidelines? or is there a different one?
So we'll wait for the IRC respondent to
Well, at any rate, if you're-
follow-up, and if anybody else
If you're a
wants
GNU
to go ahead,
project,
step right up.
using kind communication guidelines is probably fine. I mean, that's why it was written, is for GNU projects. All right.
So we're ready for a new topic. Great talk. I'm always interested in communication platforms, and so when you were talking about chat, I'm totally with you on like don't use Slack or Discord for open source. And for my project, we were on IRC for many years until Freenode fell apart, and then everyone's like, go to Matrix, and so we did for about a year and a half, 2 years. I was not completely satisfied, and I switched to Zulip. I'm really happy with that. And the main reason why I like it is that everything is publicly available. So from our issue tracker, you can link to a Zulip thread. From the Zulip thread, you can link to the mailing list, and it's just a nice, virtuous, the way the web works, that you can just link and go everywhere. Whereas with Matrix, I feel like it just goes into like this, kind of like this black hole. So anyway, this is my thoughts on.
Yeah, Zulip is interesting. Actually, I created the Zulip for the system covers community, but I never ended up using it. The thing that's interesting about it is that it kind of is a mixture between a forum and a chat. And I actually felt like that would not be enough of a distinction between those two things for it to make sense to people. It's the main reason why I didn't move forward using that, but it is a good option. I kind of like the current setup that we have in the system crafters community, where we have IRC, which is more for ephemeral discussions, and then our discourse forum, where people can go and ask questions and have like a link where they can send someone and be used as reference material. Matrix was great for a while. We used Matrix, and we still sort of do, but the LibreChat bridge between Matrix and IRC got shut down maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago. Maybe it was sooner than that. So that kind of killed our use of Matrix, but I think Matrix is nice. I also think it's maybe a little bit complicated in how it's implemented. So usually the only good clients you get for that are the ones that are made by the project. But yes, Zulip is a good option. Is it free software? I can't remember if it's actually.
It's open source.
It's
And
open
for
source
us,
at least,
since we're an open source project, we have free sponsorship. So we can
Yeah, they do get free sponsorship. So if you have an open source project, I think that they can give you a sponsorship to use Zulip without having to pay for it. So yeah, cool. Great question though. All right. Yeah.
So in your system crafters community, you of course have all your videos and your faces in all your videos, and you're very much the face of the community. What effect do you think that has when there's really like an obvious representative for the community compared to when there's not?
I think it can be important to have an obvious representative for the community. If you have a project that doesn't have like a clear leadership, it can be harder to get people motivated, I think. That's my personal opinion. Maybe that's not necessarily right, but a clear vision to a project or community can be really helpful to get people behind it. I didn't really set out to create a community when I started making videos about Emacs, but I quickly saw that a lot of people were interested in learning more about Emacs, and I thought, okay, it'd be nice to like create a place that was for people like me who want nice people to talk to, and not the people who you get on Reddit or maybe other places on the internet where they could be a little bit harsh. So the community sort of came out of making the channel, and then more people started to join, and I started to feel more that this was an actual community where there's multiple people involved who all bring their own personalities and interest to the table, and they make it a much more interesting place to be. They also contribute to projects. But I'm still like the sort of face of the community because I do the live streams and make the videos and stuff. But I actually do want to change that over time. I kind of want to like be able to bring more people in and make the channel more about the community, especially in like the Friday streams, like have more people from the community come on and talk about their projects. So you might have like an evolution in a project. If you're like the main person, you're the person writing the blog posts, or maybe posting on social media or making videos on the internet or whatever. Maybe you're the main face of the project, but maybe eventually other people will stand up too and start to help out. So I do think that at least in the beginning, it makes sense to have someone be sort of the figurehead of a project so that it helps to guide things. I mean, you could say that about the free software movement, where Richard Stallman started it. Like he was a figurehead for many years, basically promoting the idea to everyone. So it's pretty common to have this kind of thing. Was there any other like sort of implication of the question? I would to make sure I want to answer
That
it.
answers my question.
Sorry?
That answers my question.
Great, cool. Thanks.
Hi, David. Great talk.
Thank you.
This is more of a comment. No, I'm just kidding. It's a
I
question.
have a ringer here to ask me a really good question, softball question.
My question is more about the if you have any thoughts on the more subtle aspects of community moderation. So you gave examples around like, someone shows up and it's like kind of trolling or doing like edgy humor. And it becomes pretty clear. They show up and it's pretty clear, I don't really want to encourage this, and you find some ways to deal with it. But sometimes you have community members that maybe seem to be acting above board. And then maybe not even in your community directly. Maybe you find this on the Fediverse or something. You recognize a username and you see that maybe not red flags, but you start to have questions like, is this person actually, maybe not that subtly toxic or could become a problem for my community, but you don't have anything to act on like yet or anything. Like, do you have like any approach you take to kind of those more subtle aspects where you're suspicious, but you don't know exactly, it's not clear how to act?
Yeah, I've dealt with various levels of this over time. A person who, so there are people who their communication style can be a little bit brief, I guess, and maybe you just sort of get a kind of a feeling from talking to them that maybe they're being harsh, but they're actually not being harsh. A person like that, I might point it out to them, like in private. But often I'm just like sort of keeping an eye on the interactions they have with other people to make sure that they don't become a person who's being a little bit more aggressive towards other people. Someone who makes an edgy joke or has an outburst in a community forum or even somewhere else, I will probably send them a message and be like, hey, like that might make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. We try not to discuss those kinds of things in our chat. And I've had to do this a few times. But normally, a person who doesn't have bad motives will immediately be like, oh, wow, I'm sorry. I didn't know I shouldn't do that. Like, I really don't want to be a problem. So they will, respond positively to it. There's other people who will just show up and just be a jerk from the moment they step in. And normally what I do is I either try to make a joke to sort of point out to them that what they're doing is a little bit weird, or I just play dumb and try to like bait them to get them to expose like what their actual motive is, and then they sort of, it loses energy and they just leave. Or if I have to ban them, I will. I haven't actually had to ban anybody. I know that Benoit has had to ban a couple people from things. I think maybe even in the Matrix we've had to kick a couple people for spamming. But yeah, usually it's not the type of people who are like really malicious or want to hurt other people. It's more the people who don't really know that what they're doing can be considered to be unfriendly or unwelcoming, and then you can normally talk to those people privately and let them know, and it's worked well in all the instances that I've had to do it, so yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So you've got just a few minutes left for questions. I have 2 questions I'll read online, and then you've got 2 more people in line. So that's probably all we'll be able to take.
Cool.
So I'll read you both of these questions, and then you can kind of decide how to spend the last 5 minutes. So the questions were, what do you think about Mailman as a collaboration tool, like alternative to some of the other ideas mentioned? And then the second question was follow-up. What do you believe what is your opinion in terms of the scope of codes of conduct? Some codes of conduct want to extend to a person's off-project life, and I think you maybe touched on this a little.
Yeah.
Others, and their non-project related opinions, should that influence their
All right, I'll give quick answers to both of those. Mailman, I don't really have a lot of experience with Mailman as it is currently used, other than just like the mailing list that I've been on for Emacs and Geeks, et cetera. There is an effort for something called HyperKitty, which is like a better interface on top of like the newer Mailman, and it is kind of nice. Like I would be interested to see how that project develops, because it could be a good alternative where you have a mailing list, but you also have an interface on top where someone can go to the site and get a better understanding of what's been happening in the community, what kind of questions are being answered, et cetera. So whoever is working on that project, definitely like promote it better, because I didn't know it existed until I was just searching through packages in the Geeks package repository, and I happened to see it there. So people need to hear about these things. I guess that's partly my responsibility too, to let people know about this kind of stuff. But yes, I think that Mailman can be good, but it needs to be made a little bit more user-friendly, so that people who are used to more forum-based or Forge-based collaboration platforms can participate. Relating to codes of conduct and the scope that it has on people's behavior outside of the community, if the person is not a leader of the project or someone who's like clearly attached to the project and their behavior would reflect poorly on the project, I wouldn't necessarily say that they have to follow all the code of conduct to the letter, but if outside of the community they're harassing someone in the community or harassing someone else that, you know, it's been made obvious that this is happening, then yes, it would apply to them, because, you know, a person who's willing to harass somebody anywhere is going to harass somebody in your community too, so you don't want to have them around. I would definitely apply it to them. Cool. Next question.
Hey, David, really great talk. Thank
Thanks.
you. So I totally agree with you that we shouldn't be using Slack or Discord for free software or open source projects. But I'm currently interning at a telecom company, and we use Slack for all of our communications. So I was just wondering if you have any like tips or suggestions for how we can like maintain our privacy as well as like promote like a free environment while using like commercial software when we don't have the choice.
Yeah, just don't join the chat. No, I'm just kidding. There used to be ways to bridge Slack to IRC and to other protocols, but I think they finally turned all those off. I guess that if you're a proprietary chat service operator, you realize that if you want people to be affected by your game theory mechanics, that they need to actually be using your client and not some other client. So there's really not a good way around that anymore. Even Discord, like you can use alternative clients for Discord, but it's against the terms of service. You can get your account banned, so it's difficult. I mean, really the only way to deal with it then is to try to sandbox your use of that program, either by using, like I think Firefox has containers where you can kind of sandbox the use of one web page from all of your cookies and everything else that you have in your browsing sessions. So you could probably use that, or run it in a VM, which is a super heavyweight. But if you're really concerned about your privacy and you don't want things to leak into that program, then probably you would need to do that. But yeah, it's unfortunate because there's so many companies or community projects that use services like Slack and Discord, and it's just a choice that you have to make. Like, do you want to contribute to that project, or do you want to like actually communicate with your coworkers? You kind of have to like deal with it at times, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so this question's more about, I guess, like community in general, not just like community pertaining to projects. But usually, like when you see communities start, usually they're like starting organically, maybe as like a split off from something else. So I'm wondering, like, when you are like deliberately trying to cultivate a community, starting from like complete zero, how do you like get from that like 0 point towards maintaining a level of momentum and activity where there kind of is like this core user and community that is kernel that like people kind of want to go back to? Because that's what I've always found difficult. You always have that like initial surge of momentum with users, but it just kind of, you have to keep it snowballing and it's difficult.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately the marketing is the only way, but not marketing in the sense that you have to like, be constantly, bragging about your project on the internet. Just finding ways to have a regular rhythm of being able to remind people about what you're doing on, the Fediverse or through whatever other media that you feel comfortable, discussing the project on. And also, like, if there are accomplishments that are being made in the project, like really cool things that you want to talk about, I think that's a good way to get people interested. But it's difficult in the early days whenever you don't, if it's a project that you started yourself and you're trying to solve a particular problem with your project, getting people to find it is hard. Getting them to care about it is hard. So another way could be to make blog posts, videos, some kind of content related to that sort of problem space, and maybe related to other programs that are in that space, and maybe you kind of can attract some attention based on the general interest, and then you can sort of start inserting your own project as a possible alternative to that, which can feel a little bit scammy in a way, but in the end, if the goal of your project is to provide a free software program or service or something to other people, then it's all for the good. So I think that's not a bad thing to do. But
So what did that, like, I guess, look like specifically with regards to like system crafters when it was starting?
well, for me, it was easy because a lot of people are interested in Emacs. So I didn't really have to do a lot of work there. I just, posted up my streams on Reddit and people found them, and then it sort of snowballed from that. But Yeah, if it's a project that nobody's heard of yet, or not many people have heard about, it definitely takes a lot more work. So I think I cheated a little bit. Awesome.
You want to ask your questions?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So I have a question. Actually, I appreciate a lot what you say about the community and how positive we have to act and motivate others and promote new contributors, etc. And I'm just wondering if you can extend this a little bit, and do you have any tips or experience how to attract people from outside of this initial community, for example, that are more shy to contribute, or that are there, but like, is there some kind of way to reach out to those people that, like, I mean, you're mentioning Emacs, and I know librarians that are contributing and patching here and there stuff, but they don't come necessarily to the project to contribute it. So is there some way that we can announce, be friendly, or some kind of announce our friendliness to these people, to say, come and
Yeah,
contribute?
I mean, I guess it depends. Like, if the people already know about the project, they're already using it, then you have an opportunity to communicate with them further through, just like if they follow your account on the Fediverse, or if they subscribe to your RSS feed on your website, you have ways to reach them. And to motivate those people to start to actually contribute, sometimes you need to create events. With one thing I haven't actually done yet, but it's something I do want to do, like have like a hackathon, they call it, or some other kind of event where you have a focused period of time, and you have maybe one or two problems that you're trying to solve, or maybe you have one or two sort of topic areas that you want people to try to work on a project for, and then you say, hey, come join us in our chat or on our forum, and we will help you get started. Like, if you feel like you don't really know how to work on this stuff, we will be there to help you, like, hold your hand every step of the way through. We will get your first contribution merged, or we will help you create your own package or project, related to this project. I think that that's the best way, because there are many people who are shy. There are people who don't really, like, feel comfortable engaging. There's so many people that join my chat who never say anything, but they're there, and every once in a while they might say something, so I know they're watching, but they're very shy. They don't really want to, like, engage. So creating those opportunities is the best way. You can't really wait for them to do it, because some people, it's not in their comfort zone to really step out and try to do something. But what you'll find is if you can help them get started, then they won't stop. They'll keep going, because they feel so much sort of reinforcement from that positive feeling of having contributed something, but also getting out of their comfort zone and reaching like a new level in their own ability to contribute. So you're doing them a huge favor by trying to organize these opportunities to help them contribute.
A new idea for the pyramid.
What's that?
For
The pyramid, yes.
that-
We
that
got to
you
create a
just
pyramid scheme, everybody, and all proceeds go to me. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. So a moment ago, you were discussing a few strategies you had to, handle difficult people or difficult situations. Can you recommend any resources where people could find more such strategies for?
I wish I could. So there's a book that I haven't read called Nonviolent Communication. I haven't read it, but I know that it's good for like trying to deal with difficult conversations with people. Like trying to do it in a way that's compassionate to them and can kind of meet them where they are and try to help them to reach the right conclusion rather than trying to force it on them or try to be legalistic, I guess. There's another book called Crucial Conversations, but I think that one normally comes up in corporate context. I'm not exactly sure what's in that. But these are things I haven't really read myself. For me, I'm mostly going based on intuition on sort of how I would want someone to approach me if I was being a jerk. Like I would appreciate it if someone would tell me and sort of give me the benefit of the doubt, at least at first, to like improve what I'm doing so that I can actually interact with other people in a positive way. But then, if they're not willing to do that, you have to go take other measures. But yeah, I'm no expert on this, like I said. Maybe someone else can have a better answer to that question.
Yeah, that's already very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think, anybody else have any questions? I don't know. Corwin left, so.
Not quite a question, but with regard to, well, follow up to the last question about the books for nonviolent communication, crucial conversations. Those are both good. There's also another book that was written by Peter Hitchens, who was the founder
love his
of
books.
Zero MQ.
Yeah,
It's called Social Architecture.
Yeah.
He has
that's
several
great.
books. They're all free online. Yeah, another good resource. But actually, would be a little last question here. He suggests no copyright assignments because copyright assignments, as we've seen with the rug pulls, have been a way for people to sort of change licenses. I'm not worried about the Free Software Foundation doing that, but for other people, that might be other projects that might be a concern. So I don't know if you have a comment on that.
I do. Yeah, I think that copyright assignments, while they could be effective for the organizer of a project, they definitely don't protect the rights of the users of a project. I didn't really understand that until I started using Geeks and started looking at the code base of Geeks. So you see that there's the copyrights of everybody who's contributed to a given file. And then you realize that if you want to change the license of the code that's in that file or in the project in general, you have to get the permission of every single person in that list. So it provides you protection against rug pulls or a project organizer just changing what the license they're going to use or try to privatize the technology or whatever. So I think that it's better to, if you don't have a big project like the Free Software Foundation projects that do require copyright assignment, it makes sense because we're trying to, protect the GPL and also the projects that are licensed under GPL. But if you have a project that's kind of smaller, it's better to actually not require copyright assignment. You could do like developer certificate of origin. Some projects use that, which is a little bit different. It's not really copyright assignment. It's more just an attestation that you have the right to be contributing this code to the project. But then at that point, the project is governed by the license of the project. But yeah. It is friction for newcomers. If you have to sign a CLA, then yeah, it's a pain. And it's also a little bit weird, like having to sign a CLA to contribute to some corporate project, because you really start to feel like, they're benefiting from my work here, and I'm not really getting anything back from this. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We're way over time.
We're running out of time. And with respect to our schedule, I invite you to approach David directly. You're during the course of our conference, right? You're available
I'll be here
for
today,
community talk. And again, David, thank you very much for your speaking.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.